Chairman, we are now live and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everybody to the May Planning Board for Pitt County. If we could call the roll, Ms. Auten.
Fred Austin.
Present.
Don Brown.
Present.
Naomi Buck.
Say it again.
Naomi Buck.
Here.
David Davenport.
Here.
Brad Guth.
Here.
RJ Hemby.
Here.
John Landron. John Landron. Steve Little.
Here.
Tucker Moore.
Here.
Maria Rogerson. Maria Rogerson. Maria
She
Rogerson.
said she's here, but we can't hear her.
Okay. That's everyone, sir.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Landron just registered that he was here as well. So if we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Hopefully everybody got their copy of the minutes, and reviewing those, if I could I'll entertain a motion to approve or make any corrections as you see needed.
So moved.
Mr. Little moved. And Mr. Don Brown seconded. Ms. Auten, if we could do a roll call vote for those.
Fred Austin.
Approved.
Don Brown.
Approve.
Naomi Buck. Naomi Buck.
Here.
David Davenport.
Approved.
Brad Guth.
Approve.
RJ Hemby. RJ Hemby. John Landron.
Approved.
Steve Little.
Approved.
Tucker Moore.
Yes.
And Maria Rogerson.
Okay, so we've approved the minutes from the April meeting. Now we have public addresses to the board. Were there anybody that needed to make a public address? All right, so we'll close the public addresses and we'll move to the development review with an update from James Rhodes on Cheek Farm and Abbott Trail subdivisions.
Mr. Chairman, I was present on that, on the vote for the approval of the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Hemby.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully you can see my screen now. We have just a quick update for the planning board as well as those that might be viewing. You may recall a couple of months ago, we did have two subdivisions that garnered a lot of attention. Abbott Trail and Cheek Farm, which was out near the Renton area. And you may recall that Abbott Trail was actually withdrawn prior to you reviewing that particular plan back in February. So I just wanted to reiterate that particular one's already been withdrawn. If it comes back through for review, it will start at the initial onset, and it will go through a new review process. But at this point in time, it doesn't look like there'll be any review or any new development on that site anytime in the near future. Similarly, we've also received a request from Baldwin and Associates to withdraw also Cheek Farm preliminary plat. And that was just done at the end of last month. And we wanted to bring that forward for your acknowledgement and let you know that's been formally withdrawn too. So before that would come through again, it would have to reinitiate the whole review process, and we would bring that back for your concern or your consideration at that point in time. So again, I know most of you had gotten contacted by a number of citizens in that area about those developments. We want to let you know that both of those are now off of our review process, and we'll let you know if anything new comes in. Any questions about either one of those? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Right, now we'll move on to two rezoning requests. I believe Mr. Gooby is going to present those this evening.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pull my screen up for y'all. Let's see. Okay, if everybody can see that. We do have two rezoning requests tonight. The first one is from Baldwin Design Consultants. The request is to rezone about 4.76 acres of property. It's owned by Philip Lewis. It's located on the northern side of US 13 at its interchange with the NC 11 bypass, otherwise known as the Southwest bypass, from rural residential to general commercial. This is the vicinity map. You see it is located just to the west of Greenville and Winterville on US 13. And as you see here, it's also just to the west of the Southwest bypass or the NC 11 bypass. It is right at the interchange. So it's right at the bottom of that off ramp from the highway, and also between that ramp and Bell Arthur Road. This is a view of the site from from the 13 side. You can see the bypass there in the background. And then this is the view from the Bell Arthur Road side, which again, you can see the on-ramp or the off-ramp from the bypass here in the background. This is Bell Arthur Road if you're going to the north. And then this would be back to the south. You see the overpass in the background from where Davenport Farm Road was extended out to 13 or realigned towards 13. And then this is to the east on 13 as if you're heading back into Greenville. And then to the west as if you're heading towards Farmville. There are some adjacent residential land uses. This is on the other corner, on the other side of Bell Arthur Road. And then this is across 13 at the other corner. And then there's a vacant lot that's sort of catty cornered on the opposite corner of Davenport Farm Road and 13. So the site is actually within our Southwest Bypass land use plan area, and that plan does designate this as neighborhood commercial. And that is designated as being comprised of small scale commercial development in rural or neighborhood areas, and are typically composed of convenience, retail, restaurants, and some offices. The existing land uses in the area, you see it's predominantly undeveloped or agricultural. There are some residential along Bell Arthur Road in Crawfords Point subdivision. There's also Emery Woods subdivision to the south. There's also some smaller commercial uses along 13. This one here is the Little's nursery. And then back towards the west, as you head towards Farmville, there's a car dealership, as well as what was the old Silver Bullet site. The zoning in the area is predominantly RR, or the current site is zone RR. As you get further to the west, it turns into RA with there's also some general commercial along 13. General commercial districts intended to accommodate a range of retail, service, office, limited wholesale, and moderate density multifamily residential uses in those areas that have access to major thoroughfares, as well as the necessary utilities to support that type of development. It's also located within the Southwest Bypass Highway Corridor Overlay, and there are specific screening and buffering requirements that when a use is proposed and they've submitted site plans, they'll also have to meet those requirements. There'll be some screening along the bypass. There's additional setbacks off of 13 and from adjacent residential properties. So it'll have to be, those will all have to be factored into the development review. Staff does find that the request is consistent with the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan, given its location at an interchange between two major thoroughfares, as well as its designation as neighborhood commercial on the future land use map. We also find that the request is reasonable and it's in the public interest because it is located adjacent to an interchange with the bypass, and it's in an area that's considered appropriate for small scale commercial development. And again, also any future non-residential development will be subject to the requirements of the highway corridor overlay, and will have screening and buffering along the adjoining property lines and rights of way. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the request. I would like to now entertain any public comments, and the board will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, which will be scheduled to hold a public hearing on June 21st. So with that, Mr. Chair, we'd like to open up for any public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Gooby. Is there any questions from the planning board for Mr. Gooby? All right. Do we have folks from the public that would like to make comment? All right.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to acknowledge that Ms. Long is on the meeting tonight, and just want to ensure that if she wanted to speak, that our Public Information Office at least acknowledge that if she did want to speak, and make sure that she got online.
Okay. I haven't heard anything, so
She is on the call. We are.
Oh,
working with
hello.
her.
This is
thank you.
this
Thank
is
you,
Miss
Ms.
Long.
Okay,
I've received the information that I need. I just wanted to listen into what was being presented
perfect.
tonight.
Well,
So
thank you very much for attending.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion for, well, let me first off close the hearing, and do I hear a motion or any other comments from the planning board for the recommendation from the staff to approve this rezoning request?
I move we grant a conditional approval.
I believe that was Mr. Little.
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Don Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And Tab, or Ms. Auten, if you will be so kind to call roll, please.
Fred Austin,
Approve it.
Don Brown,
Approve.
Naomi Buck,
Approved.
David Davenport,
Approve.
Brad Guth,
Approve.
RJ Hemby,
Approve.
John Landron,
Approved.
Steve Little,
Approved.
Tucker Moore,
Yes.
and Maria Rogerson.
Approved.
All right, thank you very much. So this will go to the Board of Commissioners for their June 21st meeting with our recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Doobie, would you like to go to the next rezoning request?
Yes, sir. The second request is by Stephen Shane Culler. And his request is to rezone 2 acres of property. It's owned by Mikey Ray and Peggy Harris McKeel. It's located on the eastern side of Gum Swamp Church Road, north of its intersection with Briley Road. And the request is to go from rural residential to rural agricultural conditional district. And this is to operate a welding shop. You see the site here. The property, as I mentioned, is on Gum Swamp Church Road, just north of its intersection with Briley Road off NC 33. It's located sort of halfway between Greenville and Falklands jurisdiction. This is the site here. If you can make out the sign, I want to go ahead and note there's already an existing shop out there. The shop was actually built back in the early 90s and was operated for about 20 plus years as a welding shop. And it was constructed for that purpose. So it was in existence prior to zoning. According to Mrs. McKeel, who is the owner, they just stopped operating at about a little over a year, maybe 2 years ago. And so it operated as a non-conforming use. However, because it's been out of operation for so long, it's considered non-conforming. And so the applicant is proposing to essentially reopen that shop under his ownership. But it's the exact same type of use that it was before. And that's the reason for the rezoning tonight, he has to bring it up to the current standards of the zoning ordinance. But for all intents and purposes, it will be essentially the same type of use. This is on Gum Swamp Church Road, heading towards the north if you're heading away from Briley Road and away from 33. And then this is back to the south as if you're heading back towards Greenville. These are some existing homes that are located on the other side of Gum Swamp Church Road. And this is an existing agricultural field that's adjacent to the property itself. And then there's an existing manufactured home park that's also located directly adjacent to the site, which you see to the left there. Future land use plan does designate the area as suburban residential. And that's intended to include residential land uses that include single family and manufactured home subdivisions and manufactured home parks, limited multifamily, commercial, office, light industrial, and public institutional uses that meet the locational criteria. That would include frontage and access to a major state highway or secondary road, a location of a major intersection, proximity to similar uses, and spatial separation from non-compatible uses. And the land designated suburban residential does have a greater potential for development and does include a broader range of land uses. See the existing land uses, it's primarily residential and agricultural around it, but again, it is designated as sort of an industrial site because it was an existing welding shop previously. You also see some existing commercial land uses along 33, as well as some sand mines that are located just to the north on Gum Swamp Church Road. The zoning in the area you see is RR, rural residential, but there is RA within the vicinity, particularly the sand mines that are up north. Those were zoned RA. Those were rezoned for the purposes of a sand mine. And then also as you get past Roosevelt Spain Road to the east, you see there's also rural agricultural. That district's intended to accommodate very low density residential uses, as well as public institutional uses, low intensity commercial uses, and agricultural related industrial uses in areas that are principally characterized as rural in nature. There's a diverse nature of land uses and therefore permits a wide variety of land uses. And then intensive land uses, which could have any type of adverse impact on the rural nature, should be allowed on a case-by-case basis following a formal review and approval process, which is sort of what we're doing tonight with the proposed conditional zoning process. The conditional zoning district again allows for the approval of proposal use or approval of a specific use with reasonable conditions. And again, that proposed use is a welding shop. As part of the conditional zoning process, they do only have to provide a sketch plan. According to this, they're not, and according to the applicant, they're not proposing to make any other improvements or to add anything else other than what is already there. But they will also be required to provide a full site plan before we issue it, because he will have to bring it up, as I said, to standards, which would include some screening and buffering around the parking areas that's currently there. So this is the site. Generally, the boundary of the site there you see. The site is fenced in. There's an existing fence, and again, he'll have to provide some additional screening and vegetation along that property. There are three buildings. There's a 5,000 square foot shop, as well as another 2,400 square foot building, and then a storage building. Again, he's not planning to make any sort of add any other additional buildings or make any other improvements to those. And then there's a parking area, which will also have to be brought up into compliance with our zoning requirements for paving and striping to ensure that there's enough parking there for his use. And then it's also surrounded on two sides by existing woods, which could also serve as additional screening or existing screening from the use itself. And then the driveway will have to be brought into compliance with NCDOT standards, and it's also currently gated so that it restricts access to the site itself. Staff, we do find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, given its designation as suburban residential, as well as its proximity to other commercial properties along NC 33 West. And again, the use, I want to stress that it's going to be identical to the previous use. So there won't be any real change or difference to what the neighborhood has already experienced with those uses out there. Staff finds it's reasonable and in the public interest because it was previously operated as a welding shop and its proximity to other commercial uses. Additionally, the structures were constructed again for the purpose of a welding shop, and the applicant is proposing that same type of use. So staff does recommend approval of the request with the following additional conditions. No zoning permit should be issued until a site plan is approved by or submitted and approved by planning staff. Any outside storage areas should be used only for the storage of equipment and material for the proposed use. If he does provide this outside storage areas, he'll also need to provide a landscaping plan where it'll be screened by a 10-foot wide landscape buffer yard. Required parking spaces, access drives, and loading areas should be paved and maintained with concrete or asphalt or similar material. A soil erosion plan or soil erosion and sedimentation control plan should be submitted for any development or disturbance or any development that results in disturbance over 1 acre. And the site must also comply with the stormwater ordinance for nutrient control. He'll also need to obtain any permits that he would need from Pitt County inspections for occupancy of that existing structure, and also should comply with any applicable environmental health requirements for wastewater disposal. And he'll need to obtain a driveway permit from NCDOT and comply with any requirements they have for access to the property. With that, I'd like to entertain any public comments, and then the board will make a recommendation to the board of commissioners, who will also hold a public hearing on June 21st. And Mr. Chair, just before the meeting started, I did get a call from Mr. Culler. He wanted to attend the meeting tonight, but he got tied up with the job that he's working and was not able to attend. So,
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gooby. Are there any questions for Mr. Gooby from the planning board? All right, is there anybody else here? All right, hearing none, can I entertain a motion for this rezoning request based on staff's approval, recommended approval?
Motion to approve, David Davenport.
Mr. Davenport, thank you.
Second the motion.
There's a second from Mr. Little. And Ms. Otten, if you'll do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, is there a question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just not a question, but something back to Eric, and just curious. I'm fine with what's going on with this one, but I'm just curious. Up the road, I guess, from this piece of property, maybe 100 yards on the left, there is I think a nice little subdivision going on. Eric, are you aware of where I'm speaking of?
Let me see if I can pull the map back up real quick. Talking about in this area on the north, on the left-hand side?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So just curious, when did that one, or should that one have come before us? And I know that has nothing to do with this site. So just curious though.
I don't recall when that one was approved. The lots are already platted, so it was approved at some point, but I'd have to look and see exactly when it was approved
and listen,
how they run it.
they're doing a fine job. So
Okay.
Good. Okay. I just didn't.
Mr. Little, is there any other discussion?
I'm good.
All right, Ms. Otten, if you would have the roll call vote, please.
Fred Austin,
Approved.
Don Brown,
Approved.
Naomi Buck,
Approved.
David Davenport,
Approve.
Brad Guth,
Approve.
RJ Hemby,
Approve.
John Landron,
Approved.
Steve Little,
Approved.
Tucker Moore,
Approve.
Maria Rogerson.
Approved.
Right, thank you very much, Planning Board. And as Mr. Gooby said, that'll be considered at the June Board of Commissioners meeting as our recommendation to the board.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Rhodes, I believe you're next up on the agenda with some informational items for us.
Yes, sir, I am. And I'll just forego the PowerPoint, and you've got your agenda in front of you, and just let you know that we've had quite a lot of activity before our Board of Commissioners over the last couple of meetings. And I'll say we've been pretty successful in getting the recommendations that have been forwarded on actually adopted or approved by the board. And with that, I'd also like to acknowledge that we have our county attorney online tonight. Jordan was not able to join us. So Janice Gallagher is online, and she's been certainly instrumental in assisting with both the land use plan approval and all these flurry of amendments to our ordinances. So I just want to acknowledge our county attorney being here and being very supportive of our activities. So first, the NC 43 South Land Use Plan. You probably read, there's been plenty of articles in the paper about this planning effort. And in turn, there were some changes made to the land use plan and the map in particular. Our board felt like it was more appropriate to have a rural designation in areas that were within the county's planning jurisdiction. So we backed up on some of those suburban residential recommendations. And really that would come with any type of sewer service made available. And in turn, the jurisdictional line would change, that all those planning activities would be funneled through the city of Greenville at that point. So with that said, Eric and I, as well as Janice, firmly agreed this was appropriate. We needed to get this plan in place because there were a lot of things happening along the NC 43 South corridor that our current land use plan just didn't address. So we're very happy to have this plan that was adopted back on May 3rd. So if we have any future requests within that area, you'll be seeing that plan come back before you, and that's what Eric or Ben would be presenting as part of that rezoning request. So appreciate everyone's support from our planning board in getting that plan moved forward, and especially those members, Mr. Guth, as well as Mr. Davenport, serving on that steering committee for that plan. So again, the plan is in place. We're ecstatic about having that before you. Any questions about the land use plan? Okay, on to all the ordinance amendments. We had 6 public hearings at this past Monday night's meeting with the Board of Commissioners. Pleased to report that all 6 of those ordinances were adopted. Those amendments were passed. And in turn, all will become effective July 1st. And if you remember, the bulk of those amendments were associated with the new modernized planning legislation, Chapter 160D. And Eric's been talking a lot about that over the last several months. We were fortunate, moved that through the planning board at last month's meeting, through our Board of Commissioners at Monday night's meeting. All of those have been put in place, and again, will be effective July 1st. So you'll have some changes as Eric presents zoning requests in the future, or as Jason might present some subdivision information. You'll be hearing more about how those changes have affected design or some of our recommendations. So just know we have gotten all those pushed through, and we're very pleased to have that behind us. Any questions about any of the amendment processes? Okay. The only other informational items tonight, Mr. Chairman, we do have our monthly departmental report there for you, and certainly Tab has included a number of articles in your package that were pertinent to some of our planning activities and other planning activities here locally. And folks can always go online to our website to view information such as we've discussed tonight, our agenda packages and so forth. So www.pittcountync.gov will get you there, and you can click on the planning department and follow any of the activities we have going on. With that, Mr. Chair, unless there are any questions, that is all our items for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Is there any other business that the planning board or planning board members would like to address? All right, hearing none, I will adjourn our meeting on voice acclamation.
So moved. Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
we'll see everybody next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Welcome, Mr. Rhodes.